A while ago on this channel, we tried to find the answer to a very important question. Can Digimon World 1 be beaten by a Numemon? The answer was a resounding yes. It turned out to be a story of an amazing family of Numemon who gathered strength from one generation to the next. Eventually, the one they call McLean went beyond his limits, becoming the ultimate life form. He saved File Island by defeating and completely humiliating Analogman and his prize Machinedramon. But at the end of that playthrough, there was one thing that was still on my mind. One more question that kept me awake at night. For those who don't know, there are in-game tournaments known as Cups in Digimon World 1. They feature all kinds of enemies, from the weak to the notoriously strong. And of course, there is one rule that makes these tournaments harder than any other fight in the game, including the final battle against Machinedramon. You are not allowed to use any items in battle. And on top of that, your Digimon does not fully heal between fights. While it will recover some HP and MP after every battle, things can get real hard really quickly, because you have to keep in mind that each tournament has you going through 3 different opponents. The opponents always start at full HP too. And there are all sorts of cups, some easier than others, and some with brutally strong opponents that will stop at nothing to destroy you. So the question is simple. Can McLean the Numemon beat every single tournament in Digimon World 1? As far as I'm concerned, this has the potential to be a very hard challenge. While our Numemon does have max stats, that doesn't mean he's invincible, right? Stats aren't everything in this game after all. McLean was able to save the world, but does he have what it takes to become the undisputed #1 Digimon? Well, I hope you've got your snacks and Pepsi ready, because it is time to find out. Okay, before we begin, I'm sure you're all thinking the same thing. Editor man, how in the world can a Numemon even participate in every cup? Some of them have major restrictions, like fire or machine types only. You've gone crazy, editor man. I'm calling my mommy. Well, don't call your mommy just yet, my friend. Give me a chance to explain. While certain cups do have annoying restrictions, there is a way around them. For you see, I will make use of an interesting glitch. After signing up for a cup, I'll keep going in and out of the item shop until Piximon spawns. After that, if I start a dialogue with Piximon at a certain time on the clock, and then back out with the triangle button after the prompt comes up, I can override the tournament I signed up for with a different one. Here's an infographic showing the exact time on the clock that you need to talk to Piximon at, and which tournament you'll be able to select by doing that. Strange things can happen if you select a time beyond what's listed, but I'll talk about that later. Major thanks to Get92 for his work in figuring this out. Anyway, what this means is that we'll be able to enter every tournament, including ones that a Numemon isn't supposed to be allowed in. We will not allow such discrimination to hold us back anymore. Not when we have McLean around. He will not be stopped by such silly restrictions. It's time for us to get into the cage and try to get our hands on every trophy around here. We'll start with the easiest one. D rank isn't really a challenge whatsoever, to be honest. A somewhat decent rookie would be able to handle this too, and our McLean is far too strong for this rank. Oh, that Tsukaimon puts up a tough face, but that'll change soon enough. Look at him now. That didn't take long. He's had enough of this. It's alright, buddy. It'll be over soon. This cinematic shot kinda makes McLean look a bit like a villain, to be honest, but we know he's our cute, adorable friend. I do enjoy the different camera angles in the arena though. The poor, unfortunate rookie Digimon around here can't really do much else other than get whacked by piles of poop every time they try to move. I am pretty sure quite a few of them will end up traumatized by their experience here. You might have heard about the trial by fire, but not about the mythical trial by poop. Look at this poor Penguinmon. He's lost all hope in life and then gets buried in divine fecal matter. Not a fun way to go, I'm sure. Very quickly, we've taken the first trophy, and for our trouble we get 2000 bits and a double floppy. But it's not about the stuff, it's about sending a message. Beware, competitors, McLean has arrived. Next up is C rank. Our first opponent, comically, is Gearmon. Funny how a simple color switch can make it look pretty disgusting compared to the OG. This fight is really not worth talking about, or watching for too long, to be honest. It's a poop fest, except the Gearmon does not have the strength to do any significant harm to McLean. Eventually, the time runs out. McLean doesn't really have incredible firepower behind his attacks, so timeouts can happen quite often. The end result depends on damage dealt to choose the winner. Our next fight is against Machinedramon. It's only C rank, so we shouldn't really expect much in terms of stats. McLean immediately calls for the Divine Poop right away, catching Machinedramon off guard. Not much it can do once it gets flattened by the poop. What follows is what I call the McLean combo. The ultimate poop flattens, which McLean will then follow up with some speed poop shots, usually. As the enemy begins to transform back, McLean will preemptively start up the ultimate poop again, which, if timed well, can potentially put the opponent back into the flattened state. It does require a bit of luck to work, as the status effect isn't guaranteed, but when it works, it does wonders. Our final opponent is Kabuterimon, and don't take these creepy creatures lightly. They have nasty effects of their own. While they can't really do any damage directly, they have something else up their sleeves. Poison. Poison is especially deadly for our McLean. Since poison does damage depending on the max HP stat, McLean is gonna take a nasty hit every time it triggers. The effect doesn't wear off either. Considering McLean can't really do a ton of damage and won't be knocking out foes for the most part, this means that if the poison gets afflicted early in a fight, then it has plenty of time to chip away at our health. On top of everything, Bug or Earth-type Digimon like Kabuterimon appear to be resistant to poop-based attacks, which is all we have access to. All that put together means a whole world of trouble for our green, slimy friend. And even though this is only the second easiest tournament in the game, although McLean has plenty of nice HP left and would absolutely win without the timer, this Kabuterimon has stolen this fight, as well as the tournament, by the tiniest of margins. Our boy is strong, but he will have to get to grips with the timer if he's gonna be successful today. Anyway, second attempt at the C rank, and this time there's no Kabuterimon to be found, so that's cool, I guess. Our first opponent is Monochromon, who seems like he's finally taking a break from the item store. McLean is not gonna hold back at all though. The hard Monochromon hasn't got a chance here, as he suffers throughout the fight. Next up is Kawagamon, seemingly another tough fight, but Kawagamon is a pushover compared to the many members of Kabuteri gang. He ends up with some very nice HP at the end, before McLean takes it away, leading to Kawagamon's demise. Our final opponent is Ashima Unimon, who thinks it's got the time to power up in front of the ultimate Numemon. It is severely mistaken and punished for it, as the never-ending poop shots begin. McLean ends it in style, as he calls for the most devastating move in the entire Digiverse. Party time! C rank was no match at the end of the day. We'll get our revenge on that Kabuterimon eventually, don't worry. Our prize is 4,000 bits and 3 sirloins. Wow, that's helpful. Time for rank B. Our opponents are still champion level Digimon, but they're going to start having some respectable stats at the very least. Our first opponent is a Weedmon, and we already know we can't take the Earth-type Digimon too lightly. McLean brings out the big guns early to try and get the upper hand right away. It does turn out to be the right call, as Weedmon immediately gets flattened by poop. The McLean combo doesn't get into full flow this time, as an accidental speed shot is used when the ultimate poop was needed. Weedmon responds by getting McLean poisoned. We already know how ugly that can be, but it apparently triggered McLean in a nasty way, as he went a little hardcore on Weedmon afterwards. The poor thing was relentlessly assaulted by the skyfall of Dookie. It had no idea what kind of beast it had awakened. And soon, it was time for some party time, which was nearly enough to put Weedmon out of commission. And the job was finished off soon enough. That Weedmon didn't win, but the poison did plenty of damage on its own here. Opponent number 2 was Yanmamon, who had substantially lower stats compared to the Weedmon. It gets absolutely wrecked by McLean. It didn't even have a chance. The final of rank B is up against a very mid Machinedramon. It does have the ability to flatten McLean, so Machinedramon does have that going for it. Unfortunately, there's not much else it can do, as its attacks just don't have the required gusto to penetrate the hard defense of McLean's incredibly thick body. It does block the ultimate Skyfall poop to stop the McLean combo, but really it was only delaying the inevitable. The finisher was the only threat that Machinedramon had, and it does end up doing a hefty chunk of damage. But that's about it. Machinedramon survives the battle, but does still lose it. Another rank conquered, another trophy for the Numemon home trophy room. As for the prize, 6,000 bits and a restore floppy. Yay! Time for rank A. Things are getting a little serious as the ultimate level Digimon start making their appearance. Still, for the most part, this lineup doesn't look too threatening besides the Waidemon. Our first match of this tournament is up against a freaking Kunimon though. I'm sure this is the tough one from Kunimon's bed. While it may pose a threat to newbies of Digimon World 1, McLean isn't one of them. And check out this epic, long-range sniper dookie shot from our boy. That's hilarious and effective. Kunimon quickly figured out that this isn't the place to be and tried to get away. But there's no running away in a tournament. It's a cage match after all. In any case, this is an easy win. Let's move on. Round 2 is up against a famous resident of Mount Infinity. Rockmon here is well known for trying to ambush you as soon as you step into the final dungeon of this game. While it seems like a pretty easy opponent, Rockmon does have a couple of tricks for us. It uses stat boosting moves early on, which allows Rockmon to hit relatively hard, all things considered. Still, the Dookie barrage is simply too much for it to bear for too long. McLean puts it out of its misery with some destructive party time. Back to Mount Infinity with you, buddy. Our final opponent is our first ultimate level Digimon. The stats aren't ludicrously high, but it's got decent offense at least. Things start off with both Digimon showing off their moves, and Waidemon does block a couple of early hits. Although I imagine it can't be a nice experience to block such attacks with one's bare hands. I am glad I'm on McLean's side. Waidemon does get some confusion to land, which is pretty nifty, and follows it up with some heavy punches. But then, things go horribly wrong for the alien Digimon as the McLean combo gets underway. The heavenly fecal matter flattens Waidemon, who can then just stand around and take some fastball dookies to the face. As it tries to get out of that state, McLean follows that up with some more ultimate poop. And then with party time. Truly devastating. Waidemon will never recover from this, I imagine, physically or emotionally. Another victory for the ultimate life form. Huzzah! 8,000 bits and the flaming mane, the Digivolution item for Leomon, is our prize. Alrighty then. And now, it's time for rank S. This is where the big dogs come out to play. Every opponent is an ultimate level Digimon here. But while Numemon may not be considered an ultimate level Digimon, our McLean sure has the heart of one. So let's show him what we got. First up is another Waidemon, but this one is nothing like the one we fought earlier. This alien has heavy duty stats. It starts things off with DG Dimension, which does respectable damage, but also takes some big poop right to the face. Ouch! It leaves the alien confused and disoriented, understandably. It goes for DG Dimension again, but McLean shows off for the crowd by blocking it. Now is that cool or what? The one advantage we have here is that machine-type Digimon are weak to poop-type attacks. Not that our green friendo needs any unfair advantages to get the job done. The fight continues with McLean slowly chipping away at Wademon's large health pool. But in an instant, our big-brained opponent tries to turn things around by first interrupting party time, in itself some kind of sin as far as I'm concerned, and then going nuts with its own finisher, which does a ton of damage. Oh boy, we're in the big time now. Fortunately, we were able to get Waidemon poisoned with plenty of time left on the clock. The poison does a lot of work in this fight by doing a nice amount of damage over time. Speaking of time, it runs out before we reach a proper conclusion. McLean had to earn this win, that's for sure. Our friend took plenty of damage here. Waidemon does deserve some respect. It appears that the final will be against Piximon. Oh boy, we all remember that annoying creature, right? But right now, we gotta handle this Metal Greymon. For whatever reason, Metal Greymon is pretty trash, to be honest. While the Waidemon fight was pretty tough, the same can't be said for this one. Metal Greymon takes a massive beating here. I don't think he expected to face something like our McLean when he signed up for the S-Rank tournament. He definitely did not come prepared for all this dookie. He tries to get back into the fight with his finisher, but it really doesn't do a lot of damage. Maybe he didn't press L1 and R1 fast enough. I get that. I have a hard time with that too sometimes. Eventually, the timer runs out, practically saving McLean, as McLean was tuning up the band for some epic party time. I don't think McLean would have survived that. And now, the final of the S-Rank tournament. This Piximon has some pretty impressive stats, I would say. But let's see what kind of fighting spirit it's packing in its tiny body. Truthfully, I was concerned about this fight. Depending on the moveset, it could have access to a poison move, which has proven to be really strong even on weak champion level Digimon. It gets flattened early, but our boy can't really make good use of it, as the combo gets completely cut off very quickly. Piximon keeps trying to use a wind attack with a very long animation, but McLean is having none of that nonsense. In fact, he ends up poisoning Piximon, which is a pretty big deal. We almost have it in the bag. If Piximon had a better move than the wind attack, it could have done something here. But our worst fears become reality, as Piximon not only has access to the poison move, but ends up poisoning McLean, with plenty of time on the clock still. Things could have really gone off the rails for us, but McLean had the presence of mind to interrupt Piximon's finisher. If that had hit, I'm pretty sure we would have lost. This was a very close fight, and the timer runs out while both Digimon had plenty left in the tank. But we edge out our opponent in terms of damage, which means McLean stands alone as the victor. A win that was certainly earned the hard way. We get a bunch of bits and the metal part, the Digivolution item for McLean. Nifty. We have now beaten every ranked tournament. It's time to move on to the more restricted ones. The powers that be might not have wanted any lowly Numemon to be a part of them, but it's a new world out there. McLean will pave the way for all future Numemon. First up is the Wind and Thunder Cup. The Digimon lineup isn't exactly terrifying compared to what we've seen not too long ago. That's kind of the thing with these niche tournaments. We can find a variety of Digimon in terms of stats and Digivolution level, so it's quite possible for us to find some really weak, pathetic competitors here. I'm not gonna save and reload to get better or worse opponents. I'll just take whatever the game throws my way. Some fights are gonna be particularly disappointing, such as this one against a Biomon. The poor thing was in for a difficult time, to say the least. McLean didn't hold back though. He treats everyone equally on the battlefield, no matter the size or shape. It's the right way, kinda like the Imakandi way. But this still is a depressing sight, seeing this deflated and demoralized Biomon being destroyed like this. Yes, very sad. Anyway, the final is against an Airdramon, who spends quite a bit of this fight on its back, after getting plummeted by fecal matter all over the place. I do wonder if they clean this cage after every tournament that McLean participates in, or have they given up on that? Is the audience okay with this? I imagine the smell must be unbearable, but I don't hear any complaining at the very least. In fairness, Airdramon does give it a go, but really, it is way out of its depth in this fight. You know what they say, when the heavenly poop begins to descend, there will be no place to hide. The timer saves Airdramon, but it still gets dookied at the end. Another trophy added to the collection. We can now proudly say that McLean is the best wind or thunder type Digimon. We also get the Unihorn, the Digivolution item for Unimon. I am unimpressed. Let's turn up the heat with the Fire Cup next. Another kinda middling lineup, but hey, that Agumon beat a Miramon. That's pretty hot. Our first match is against probably the strongest Digimon besides McLean in this tournament. At least it's an ultimate level Digimon. But no matter the level of our opponents, I'm sure they're all equally petrified when they see the sky darkened and the sun blocked by the descent of Heavenly Dookie. Vermilimon did not enjoy this fight, of that I am certain. At the end, it tried to go out with some dignity by pulling out the finisher, but even that was interrupted. Rest now, Vermilimon. Rest in feces. The real shock of this tournament is the fact that Agumon is in the final. Maybe it's some kind of uber powerful Agumon? We gotta take care of this sad looking Santarumon first. It goes as well for Santarumon as you would expect. I think it just gave up immediately, seeing the absolute unit that it was up against. McLean ends the fight with some epic party time. That never gets old. And now it's time for the final. What kind of monster Agumon are we about to face? Oh, I see. Did Agumon pay its way into the final? Oh, this is hard to watch. I don't know what the Agumon thought was gonna happen, but this was definitely not rated PG. Look away, everyone. Look away. McLean puts him out of his misery immediately. Hey, Agumon, second place isn't too bad. It comes right after first. Another tournament done and dusted. McLean is the strongest fire-type Digimon too. Who knew? And we get the Fireball, if we ever wanted a Miramon ourselves. Battle Cup is our next destination. Pretty poor lineup of opponents again, really. Where are all the tough guys? Our first fight is against Psychemon, or Discount Gabumon as some prefer to call it. Nothing to write home about. It got 1 HP of damage off on McLean, but that was it. It also took some very nice damage while at really low health, so that might have sent it directly to the clinic after this fight. Ouch. Dremogimon gets into our cage for round 2. The stats aren't garbage, but they're not impressive either. Dremogimon gets a few hits in before getting his world rocked by some party time, and gets put down for good soon afterwards. That hard drill ain't gonna get hard no more. The final is against Devimon, who looks cool as always. He gets poisoned very early in the fight, and keeps going for Electric Cloud for the majority of this battle for some reason. Terrible move selection for Devimon here. And the bout ends in a rather depressing way for Devimon, as it gets caught up in the McLean combo, which is completed by a very hard-hitting party time. Good night, Prince of Darkness. It's all over. I think we can safely say that McLean is now the strongest battle-type Digimon too. And we get the Spike Club, which is okay. Time to head to the Ice Cup. I assume one has to be really cool to win this one. And if there's one thing we know about Numemon, it's that they're really cool. If you're cool too, don't forget to smash those like and subscribe buttons, just like our friend has been smashing his foes today. First up is Sealamon, and the fans of the Hardcore Vice playthrough may remember this particular matchup quite well. Sealamon annihilated a distant future cousin of McLean, so we already don't like it around here because of that. And just like that Sealamon, this one has access to some really fast attacks too. Whether it's the Ice Shard or the Teardrop, they both go off faster than our moves. Even though they don't really do any real damage, it keeps McLean stun locked for a bit. Even blocking and attacking doesn't work, as Sealamon reacts really quickly with another attack right away. I was slightly concerned about the way things were going, especially after Sealamon pulled out the finisher. That still did some damage there. Not a lot, but enough to be an annoyance. But eventually, McLean decided to stop playing around and show his superiority. He quickly began beating the dookie out of Sealamon with his own dookie. That's pretty poetic, right? We end up winning because of the timer in the end. Not the conclusive beating that Sealamon deserves, but it'll be a long time before it ever feels clean again. Ice Devimon is our next opponent in the Cool Cup, and we get into a really strange exchange with him, where he keeps trying to poke us over and over, trying to keep McLean stun locked as long as possible, and then tries to spit in his face. Now that's very disrespectful. Our buddy was really not amused by these antics, and began a heavy-duty beatdown on this Ice Devimon. From the McLean combo to party time, while the Ice Devimon was flattened. That's pretty hardcore, I'd say. And for the final, we have Shellmon as our opponent. It takes quite a few massive dookies straight to the head, which must have been pretty distressing for it. I just hoped that there would be no lasting brain damage from all these poop shots to the cranium. This isn't a contest in any way though. The difference in skill and power is simply too substantial. Shellmon does survive till the end of the fight, and it should consider that a victory in itself. More importantly, McLean has proven that he is the strongest and the coolest Ice-type Digimon as well. For the reward, we get some bits and the North Star, which is a Digivolution item for Vamon. I guess that's cool? Time for the Dino Cup. Many have wondered who the best Dino-type Digimon is. Let's see if that's Numemon. Also, this Greymon beat a Vermillimon, so that's pretty impressive. Is that the Demon Greymon we used to run away from in the Hardcore Vice mod? We'll see soon enough. First up is Machinedramon. We've seen all it has to offer already, and it's not much. It does play a smart game this time around by powering up every chance it gets. Machinedramon knew it would need to buff those stats up to have any chance here. While this does allow Machinedramon to get a few half-decent attacks in, it's nowhere near enough. McLean couldn't do a lot of damage in this fight because of the buffed up defense, but still got to inflict more than the requisite amount of pain. There's only so much Dookie any Digimon can resist, right? Greymon loses to Shellmon, so that's definitely not the Demon Greymon that I know of. Our next opponent is Dark Rizamon, with rather pitiful stats. It gets the life pooped out of him rather easily. Our final opponent is Shellmon, and the numbers don't look good here either. Honestly, in these tournaments, besides us, pretty much anything can get to the final. There's no guarantee that the final opponent will be a worthwhile one. It's been a while since we've seen any decent opponents at all, really. The only thing Shellmon can do is slow down the inevitable by trying to stunlock us. However, it doesn't really matter in the end. Shellmon here really isn't worth our time, nor does it have any right to call itself the strongest dino. I know that for a fact because McLean is the strongest dino type Digimon. Another day, another trophy for the trophy room. And we get the Grey Claws too, if we ever wanted a Greymon of our own. We're gonna run through the next few cups a little faster, as there's nothing much of note in there competition-wise. Next up is the Demi Animals Cup, and oh boy, that's an uninspiring lineup. The final round is against a Gururumon, but not a very good one. While it does have Ice Statue, it doesn't have the power to really make much use of it. McLean wraps this up with a party time to put down this Gururumon. With another trophy in the bag, McLean is now the strongest animal-type Digimon. And we get the Steel Drill. I bet it's pretty hard. And now, let's head to the Demi-Human Cup? Okay. Another bland group of competitors. They simply aren't worth McLean's time. The final is up against another Ice Devimon, who gets humbled fairly easily. The best human-type Digimon? Well, everyone now knows that that title belongs to McLean. And I don't know, I prefer having an Angemon beaten up to get my Devimon. The Wing Cup is next, and our McLean may not have visible wings, but he can still fly higher than any of these bozos. Another Ice Devimon in the final. They sure do well in tournaments, but not nearly well enough to hold a candle against us. Another easy victory, which means another easy trophy. McLean flying high. Now, are you all ready for the Machine Cup? Many don't know that a Numemon's skin can be as hard as metal. It's true. If you don't believe me, go out there and touch a Numemon yourself. You'll see. You'll all see. Also, it's worth keeping in mind that poop beats metal, so we do have an advantage here. Obviously, the Digimon around here are a cut above the kind of opponents we've been running into for a while. This Machinedramon is as nasty a customer as any we've found so far. No one should be surprised by the fact that it has Ice Statue, and it definitely enjoys using it. Machinedramon also has enough strength to actually pierce McLean's defense and do some reasonable damage. Even still, it is an uphill battle for Machinedramon, considering his Dookie weakness. In addition, his other attacks besides Ice Statue leave plenty to be desired. With a better moveset, who knows what could have happened. But that finisher hurts quite a bit and looks pretty cool too. But you know what hurts more and looks even cooler? Well, you all know the answer. Party Time practically blows a hole through Machinedramon, considering the amount of damage it dealt. There was no coming back from this. Machinedramon gave it everything, but fell short, as many have done before. Next up is Waidemon, and it's got some good stats too. Honestly, Waidemon kinda had the upper hand during the early exchanges. That one homing attack that it has access to is really kind of degenerate, as it hits so many times that it will eventually land. McLean still does a solid job trying to block as many of them as possible. Waidemon's finisher deals a bunch of damage, but not as much as Machinedраmon's. But more importantly, it interrupts party time. That's really not okay. While things appear to be going well for it, Waidemon quickly loses any control it had by constantly trying to go for the significantly less effective DG dimension. That gives McLean the opportunity to hit back hard. And we all know how hard McLean can get when he's feeling froggy. Waidemon gets poisoned as well, which was the final nail in the coffin for its chances here. The worst part, in my opinion, is that it took all those dookie shards to an exposed brain. That's gonna do some lasting damage, I'm afraid. Ugh. While the last couple of fights have been kinda close, that's all coming to an end as we head into the final against Metal Greymon. Something is wrong with all the Metal Greymon in the arena, I feel. They just aren't built for competition. I mean, yeah, Poop has the advantage in this situation, but at least our last two opponents held their own against us. The same can't be said for this pitiful Metal Greymon, however. It ends up being the only one out of the three to actually get knocked out. That's gonna bruise the ego, but perhaps not as much as the knowledge that McLean has proven himself to be the most powerful machine-type Digimon. Metal Greymon is not gonna enjoy that news when he wakes up. If he ever wakes up, I mean. The cyber parts are the Digivolution item for Andromon. On that note, where are all the Andromon? Where are they? Now, it's time for a tournament where our McLean will probably feel a lot more comfortable. The Filth Cup. And oh boy, that's interesting. A lot of Gearmon in this one. This really is the ultimate Dookie Fest. All you Filth Digimon enjoyers must be having a good time watching this. To be honest, I don't think random Digimon would have showed up to watch this live. You'd have to be a true Digimon of culture to appreciate the nuances of such battles. A very high IQ is needed to understand these fights, I'd say. McLean has absolutely no trouble here though. He was the best Filth-type Digimon even before the tournament began, after all. This right here, this is as epic as it gets, am I right? Couldn't you just watch this forever? Okay, maybe not forever. All three tournament matches were against Gearmon, which was nice. But in the end, they all recognized who the filthiest Digimon truly was. We get the sunglasses, which can help rookie Digimon turn into Numemon. Wow, just what I always wanted. Anyway, we're gonna take a break from the type tournaments and try something different. We're heading for the version cups next. The versions, as far as I know, refer to the old school handheld Digimon games. Certain Digimon were only present in certain versions, I guess. But perhaps no one knows that Numemon was actually present as a secret Digimon in every version. Well, that's our story anyway. The Digimon here are a depressing sight after the hardcore fights we had in the Machine Cup. Not much to say about any of them, really. It's a slaughter all the way through. The Fugomon in the final tried to look strong and unafraid, but everyone knew that he was horrified on the inside. At the very least, McLean tried to put Fugomon away as quickly as he could. That was a show of mercy, in my opinion. The best Digimon in version 0? Why, it's a Numemon, of course. We get the Red Ruby for winning, which is actually the Digivolution item for Phoenixmon. That's pretty cool, I have to say. Version 1 is up next, and once again things look pretty sad as far as the opposition goes. There's a Metal Greymon in here, but that's it. Why are there so many middling Digimon in all these cups? I don't understand. With all the restrictions in place for entry, I had imagined these cups would be a pretty hardcore test of our abilities. But no, we keep getting thrown into the cage with what I think are mostly C or B rank opponents at best. What a waste. The Metal Greymon gets to the final, but it probably should have forfeited the match right away. It's weaker than the other Metal Greymon we met earlier, so it's even less prepared for the wave after wave of Dookie heading his way. It's like the Poop hits Metal Greymon like a truck, except the truck keeps backing up and running over the poor thing over and over. Absolute annihilation, nothing more, nothing less. As many of you may have guessed, McLean is the toughest version 1 Digimon. The White Fang is a Digivolution item for Tyrannomon. I never want to train another one, so this will go in the trash. Time for version 2, and oh boy, there's a Kabuterimon in here. That'll be fun. But first up is Analogman. Alrighty. To be fair, Analogman does try real hard here. It was able to block so much high-speed fecal matter, it was kinda impressive. It eventually succumbed to poison, which was sad to see. But it was a noble effort. Nicely done, little one. That Kabuterimon couldn't even get past that Murdramon, so I guess the rematch will have to wait. Waitmon is our next opponent, and this was a rather strange battle. The alien spends the vast majority of the fight powering up over and over, as its life is slowly drained by McLean's unrelenting attacks. This whole thing goes on for a while. Waidemon would get flattened, then it would get back up and start powering up again. But all those buffed up stats never really get the chance to show what they can do, as eventually McLean gets tired of all this nonsense and pulls out Party Time, which knocks Waidemon out. A pretty weird match, for sure. Our final match is against a Vegemon. This should be a walk in the park, right? Oh no. McLean gets afflicted by the nasty poison effect relatively early on, and boy, that residual damage adds up over time. Not to mention that we get pretty unlucky with some other status effects as well. It felt like nature itself had conspired against our friend, who just couldn't get enough damage in to offset the poison damage. McLean did get some heavy duty party time in before the time went out, but still. The poison did just enough to give Vegemon, of all things, a shocking win. A major upset, if I've ever seen one. Poison is the real final boss for us, I suppose. Anyway, round 2 for the version 2 cup, and our very first opponent is Vegemon. How fitting. McLean had a lot of pent-up rage to dispense this time around, and had no intention of giving Vegemon even an inch. It gets smacked around the cage for a very long time. Each hit may not do a ton of damage, but the mental stress from all that poop must have done something, I'd say. Vegemon doesn't get lucky with the poison effect this time, which means it has no chance whatsoever. The camera doesn't even show the hit from Party Time, which I thought was kinda funny. But yeah, without a ton of luck, there's not much that Vegemon can do, besides lowering its head in despair. The Waidemon is the same one from before, I think, as it tries the same strategy as before, which fails horribly, just as it did last time. Not a very smart move for someone with such a big brain, really. The final this time around is against a Vamon. The opponent might be new, but the story is pretty much the same as before. McLean puts an end to this cup with some uninspired party time. Our boy didn't even need to try too hard to become the best Digimon from version 2. Blue Crystal is the Digivolution item for Garurumon. So there's that. Well then, what does version 3 have in store for us? Apparently, nothing which can be described as even remotely interesting. A Patamon did beat a Unimon here though. Must have been that injured Unimon who we helped in the main game. But as luck would have it, that Patamon is who we end up facing in the final. But it's not a very pretty sight. This is a tragic fight for the little guy. Literally no hope whatsoever, only poop. At least it ends quickly so it didn't have to suffer too long. Version 3 cup is in the bag too. The Iron Hoof is our prize, but who in the world wants a Centaurumon? Not me. Time for the final version cup, and we do have a reasonable contender to deal with up first. We've faced plenty of Megatramon already, so McLean knows what to expect. I thought this would be at least interesting to watch, but this Megatramon has a horrible moveset. All of its moves take a long time to go off, and that means McLean has plenty of time to just not let them happen. Even the few moves that do hit don't really do anything, so GG Megatramon. The rest of the tournament is super easy. The final opponent is a Kawagamon who doesn't know the really good insect or nature moves, so it gets a metric ton of poop as its prize for reaching the final. It does not survive the fight. The version cups were a cakewalk for McLean, and really not much has threatened him at all. The biggest problem has been the poison status effect more than anything, but maybe these last couple of tournaments will change that? I've saved what I thought would be the hardest ones for the end. The Earth Cup is our next destination, and you know what that means. All kinds of nasty enemies that McLean can have a hard time against. They may not look like much from a distance, but they can be troublesome, as we've seen before. Our round 1 opponent is a Vegemon, with weak stats, but stats aren't our only concern here. McLean tries to get his patented combo going, and it does put in work early on, but Vegemon is able to stop that from going into a loop. And what follows is a very single-minded approach from the one who can farm sirloins, as it repeatedly attacks with a quick flattening move. Even blocking it and trying to retaliate often doesn't work, as the move is so quick. The arrival of some much-needed party time ends up turning the tide in our favor, and Vegemon is simply incapable of making up the raw difference in damage over time. Still, not as easy a win as it should be. And round 2, it appears, will be a rematch against our old nemesis, Kabuterimon. The heavenly descent of fecal matter does catch Kabuterimon off guard early on, allowing McLean to get a few decent shots in. But then, as it happened before, calamity strikes once again, as our boy gets poisoned with a ton of time still on the clock. To make matters worse, McLean spends a significant amount of time confused as well. Definitely not a fun time. Even party time can only do so much against these earthly insect foes. The poison did the work, while Kabuterimon gets the applause. Not much we could have done about that, really. You can see why I avoided this cup for so long. Oh well, we gotta try again, right? Attempt number 2 for the Earth Cup, and Kabuterimon gets knocked out in the first round. I wanted a rematch, but this works too. Round 1 is up against our old friend Kunimon. Nothing worth of note happens here. McLean simply overpowers Kunimon, who can't really mount any offense at all. The stats were far too low for that. It gets a whole lot of poop for showing up to the tournament, so good for Kunimon. For round 2, we have Weedmon. Nothing to be scared of here, really, right? Our loss in the previous Earth Cup was a fluke. It's not like this pathetic Weedmon has a chance in... Oh god, no, not again. That darn poison. This is not okay. We ended up getting poisoned even earlier this time. Nearly 70 seconds of this nasty, naughty status effect is absurd. Our earthly enemies are too resistant to fecal matter for McLean to put the hurt on them. And as it happened before, so it happens again. This Earth Cup is no joke. But we can only keep moving forward until our enemies are destroyed. Attempt number 3 started with a surprisingly easy win against Vegemon. But here we go. A rematch with our old foe. Understandably, McLean takes a very cautious approach this time around. It's important to try and defend and then go on the counterattack whenever possible. The quick, nearly instantaneous attacks can flatten, and if that happens, then Kabuterimon may follow that up with poison attacks. That has happened before. The Electro Shocker finisher does an enormous amount of damage, considering how low that Kabuterimon's attack is. In response, McLean gets a full powered party time off, which does about half the damage that the Electro Shocker did. I personally do not enjoy the presence of bugs and insects, and it seems that McLean has adopted that trait from me. But the most important thing here is that we avoid the poison, and in fact, McLean ends up poisoning the Kabuterimon. I feel like this is some sort of poetic justice. As the timer hits 0, it appears that we've outlasted our opponent, but only barely. Members of the Kabuteri gang are not to be trifled with. The final turns out to be against Weedmon, so we have our hands on yet another grudge match. Things start badly here, as we get confused right off the bat. This Weedmon ain't playing around, and it has plenty of HP as well, so McLean needs to get his head into the game. But I mean, look at this. 2 gladiators going at it, nothing held back. What more could you want from a battle? What else do you want to see? Are you not entertained? But then, tragedy strikes once again at McLean's Achilles heel, with 69 seconds still on the clock. This is not looking nice. Our weedy adversary knows exactly what to do, as it uses quick attacks to keep us down, letting poison do the hard work and chip away at our boy. And to add insult to injury, take a look at this block from Weedmon, turning his back on McLean before blocking with ease. Was this a sign of straight disrespect towards McLean? Even if it wasn't, it forced the hero of File Island to try and go beyond his limits. Despite the confusion, McLean found the mental clarity required to call upon the heavens for the descent of divine poop. Not only that, but he was going for the McLean combo while confused and poisoned. How was he able to do this? How was he able to push himself so far? I suppose it's something only the strong would understand. But that was only the beginning, as the turnaround was completed by an incredibly powerful party time, which really put the hurt on Weedmon. I don't think it saw that coming. As the battle drew to a close, even though he had to deal with negative statuses throughout the fight, even though the poison was on him for so long, McLean stood victorious. This cup truly tested our filthy friend, yet the heart of justice prevailed once again. And as he battled through the hordes of Earth-type Digimon, McLean became the strongest among them as well. and that left one final cup to take on. As you may know, the Beetle Cup is held only on the 22nd day, and it's not held in Greymon's arena. Instead, one has to go all the way over to Beetle Land. Of course, normally they don't allow anyone but their own kind to enter, but I feel like they'll make an exception for McLean. It's time to show them who the true strongest beetle is. Our round 1 opponent is a relatively weak Tentomon. I thought it would be an easy start, but as we've seen far too many times already, these poisonous Digimon can turn a simple battle into something way worse. And Tentomon indeed got the memo about McLean's main weakness beforehand, as it got the poison online almost immediately. Truly degenerate behavior for sure. While Tentomon had no chance of winning this, it was able to put a major dent in McLean's HP. Was that its purpose all along? To soften McLean up for others to try and finish the job? Doesn't sound too crazy of an idea to me. Another Kabuterimon is up next, which did make me a bit anxious. But McLean takes the initiative almost immediately by making some poison plays himself, with quite literally the first move of the game. And then he successfully confuses Kabuterimon too. You can see how McLean became one with the earth itself after the last cup. All the things that he was hurt with, he's adopted all of it and made it a part of his own arsenal. Truly amazing, is it not? And really, it seems McLean has finally figured out how to deal with all the Kabuterimon around here. It gets beaten up pretty badly without putting up much of a fight, or at least it didn't feel like much of a fight. McLean had his patented combo locked in for a while, finishing it off with a reasonably strong party time. No knockouts, but a very comprehensive win indeed. And with that out of the way, only one more opponent remains. It's time to take on the ultimate beetle. Hercules Kabuterimon has the biggest numbers, stat-wise, that we've seen so far. I hope you've all refilled your Pepsi for this. It's time for our final battle. Hercules here takes an early lead. It's got some pretty strong, aggressive attacks, which is to be expected from a creature this size, I suppose. McLean gets a few hits in, but the early game belongs to our adversary. But then, McLean remembers his training against the Kabuteri gang and all the others, becoming one with the earth once again, and turns the tables on Hercules Kabuterimon by poisoning it. A massive shift in the landscape of this fight. And this is an opponent who has a similar amount of HP as McLean, so it's gonna take some hefty damage from this. The art of poison that he learned from all these bug, earth and insectoid type Digimon, McLean has used it against them. He is using all of his experience here. Hercules Kabuterimon tried to go for a potentially painful finisher, but McLean was having none of it. He then asserts dominance by going for some party time. What a fighter! That finisher from Hercules could have changed everything. The two titans continue to hammer away at one another. A battle for the ages right here. But the main problem for Hercules was that it did not appear to have a poison move that it could use. Without it, it simply could not offset the damage that continued to chip away at its health. Try as it might, it just isn't going his way. As the timer runs out for the final time, Hercules Kabuterimon falls. It is all over. The final trophy has been attained. Every tournament has been beaten and conquered by a Digimon who stands at the top of the mountain alone. A Digimon who is the strongest fire type, earth type, machine type and every other type. A Digimon who will be remembered as the best, the strongest Digimon of every category out there. The savior of File Island and the dominator of the arena. The Digimon, known simply as McLean. Well, there you have it. A simple Numemon has beaten every official cup in Digimon World 1. You might be thinking, Editor Man, that was great and all, but are there any secret unofficial cups? Well, I suppose I could show you some glitch cups. These can be accessed through the same glitch I mentioned in the beginning of this video, by choosing a time not associated with any of the main cups. The glitch cups, as you may expect, are pretty dang strange. The stats are bonkers, really. But even worse, the battles themselves are completely broken, and not in a good way. For some reason, neither Digimon does anything at all. I mean, I could understand the opponent not doing anything here, but even McLean finds himself unable to move. Even if the timer runs out, the staring contest seems like it will continue for eternity. Is this purgatory? I wouldn't be surprised if it is. Maybe it would be a good idea to avoid these cups altogether. But there is another type of cup that I found. You may have heard about this one in my Secrets and Lost Content video for Digimon World 1. The special thing about this cup is that the opposing Digimon have no stats at all, including HP, which means that they hit the floor as soon as the bell rings. Are these lifeless carcasses animated by some unholy magic for a few moments? I'm not sure, but it sounds pretty believable to me. So this tournament can be won, but what does that mean for us? I don't know. I guess McLean is the strongest glitch too? That makes sense. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so on our Patreon, where we have cool exclusive content. Or you could buy me some Pepsi too. Every little Pepsi helps. And now, a quick word from my amazing patrons. Thank you Chaos Untold, Hero Emblem, Spider President, Blake CN1, Vanilla and Yogg for your continued support. And here's a special shout out to McTivil, an amazing friend of the channel. Your friendship keeps nerdhood strong. Thank you, McTivil, my friend. And now for an ultra strong shout out to the amazing trio that keeps File Island safe and sound. A massive thank you to Shamine, the Postman and Derpin Goose for your support. You're the best like no one ever was. Well then, McLean can now take a well-deserved vacation. He's earned it, that's for sure. But do not worry, if evil ever came back to File Island and a hero was needed to save it, then we can rely on our green friend to return, and for the Heavenly Dookie to once again descend on enemies of peace and harmony. Until then, he'll be fishing or hanging out with his buddies at Trash Mountain or something like that. Well, that's all I have for you today. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. This is the Editor Man, signing out. Bye-bye!
No